Julia Sands letter number 4, October 27, 1881. Honorable Chester A. Arthur, what a splendid Henry V you are making! Excuse me for coming back from some other world to say so, but, odd as it may seem, you are the only person to whom I can talk on the subject. Some time ago, it is wonderful what a long time ago it seems now, I told you that I had faith in you, but I never mentioned it to anyone else, and as yet I have not met anybody who believes in you as I do. So when I read something in the papers which delights me, I am dumb. Even when you have realized my highest expectations, I shall not have the satisfaction of saying to anyone, "There, I told you so." And that is hard, you will admit, but perhaps I shall be able to screw a little comfort out of the reflection that I told you so, when there were not so many to say it as there will be then, or even as there are now, for you threaten to become popular. Yes, popular. Will popularity spoil you? I think no, but cannot be certain yet. When we have gone through tribulation, a sudden whirl of prosperity does not sweep us off our feet as easily as if our whole path had been smooth. You will remember last summer, long after the rest have ceased to think of it. To most of us it was a tragic incident in our panorama of the world, but to you it was different. It cut so deeply into your life. Perhaps you were thinking of it the other day when for the first time the guns saluted you as president. Perhaps it was the undercurrent of your thoughts all the time when you were in Yorktown. Your speech there was beautiful. It was perfect, not a word to add, to alter, or to omit. And your order regarding the British flag went right to the hearts of the people. It gave expression to what thousands felt, yet were quite at a loss to how to utter. But you knew for them, and somehow it drew them nearer to you. Persons not inclined to admire you are ready to admit that you have excellent taste and tact. Just what it means cannot be easily measured. Taste and tact may be merely the polish of which any hard surface is capable, but I do not like to think of men as blocks of marble, things that may be cut down in the finishing, but cannot be made to expand. I prefer to think of them as things with infinite powers of growth, and to me tact and taste are the sweet-scented flowers which spring from the root of true sentiment and deep feeling. And so Mr. Murad H. was misled, and you are going to keep your postmaster as long as you choose, and no longer. Somehow that made me laugh. You do not love newspaper talk, do you? But you ought to be patient with both writers and readers, considering the great advantage you have over them. You know lots about yourself, but are obliged to tell nothing. Editors may know nothing about you, but are obliged to tell lots. And then think of the rest of humanity. Probably you do not half appreciate what you are spared, in not having to look at the papers to find out what you did yesterday, are doing now, will do tomorrow, and are likely to do on the whole, and did 5 years ago. Yes, you ought to be patient. But I have a notion that you are not, with me. You would not tolerate for the 2 weeks a court in which people express their opinions in the pell-mell manner of someone you never heard of. It would tax your grace of manner certainly, but you are not likely to be so troubled. People who go to court generally know that discretion is the better part of valor, don't they? And you must remember that it is the best regulated courts of old dwarfs, always the privileged characters, so you must not expect an exception in this case. Dwarfs are not being able to advance far, naturally, cling to the old traditions. And now, having established a principle, quite to your satisfaction, I trust, on which I may say all the unpleasant things I choose, I may say them, may I not? But I don't want to. If I ever do say them, you may be certain they pain me more than they do you. If there is a happy part to the presidency, you have not got to it yet. I think of you very often as being careworn and sad, and wish so much that I could say something of comfort to you. But what is there to say? If the details of your work are not irksome, if human nature is not irritating, if your burdens are not heavy, and you feel well and bright, sympathy is superfluous. Point it out just the other way. Your work is wearisome, heavy, and you feel well and bright. Sympathy is superfluous. Oh. I'm going to redo that sentence. But what is there to say? If the details of your work are not irksome, if human nature is not irritating, if your burdens are not heavy, and you feel well and bright, sympathy is superfluous. Point of it is, just the other way, your work wearisome, human nature exasperating, and you are tired and worn out and have a headache. Why, I am afraid your head will ache all the same, even if a little dwarf should say to you over and over again, I am so sorry. But I don't see why big people have to be so troublesome. The governor of Indiana ought to have made up his mind more quickly, and if Mr. McVee thinks he is doing a grand thing in resigning, he is mistaken. He is doing a small one. He may be better than anybody else in the world, but the public is not interested in the subject. It would have to be quite time to trot out his extra virtue, when you, as president, have done something to offend it. Just now it looks as if you were trying pretty hard to do your duty, and he was not trying at all. So he has chosen a good background to shine his light against. And now may the dwarf say something offensive without offending you. Don't have your old friend Grant much around you. When you are at your best, you may have a good influence on him, but he will never help you to do anything that is worth doing. He is unintellectual, heavy, commonplace. Do you remember what sort of a man Lincoln was in '60 and what in '65? He was alive in every fiber. He grew from day to day. If he made a mistake once, he never repeated it. He was a larger man in heart and soul and mind when he died than he was when he first came into office. I believe that you have some of that power of growth in you. Grant has not. He is not even a block of anything that takes polish easily. 8 years of the presidency ought to be an education to a man, even if he knew only how to read and write before. A trip of years' duration around the world would be an education to any bright boy in his teens. Grant has had both, and what has he learned? Except an inflated impression of his own greatness, has an additional idea been rubbed into his brain? In case it has, he has kept the secret wonderfully. If you are really fond of him, there is no accounting for tastes. Keep him as a friend to smoke cigars with when you have nothing else to do, but don't consult with him on national affairs. Do not let the people believe that he is to influence your administration. He will never give you an idea that is new or deep or even bright. To him, politics means which man is to get a place, and very little else. As to real statesmanship, he has no more conception of it than has a wild elephant. Now don't be angry with me, you know it is so. Only you are too polite to even think of it. At any rate, remember that you promised for silence. For silence is consent, isn't it? That I could say to you whatever I chose. So I will choose one more thing. That was very ugly, jerking Mr. Bayard out of his place at the head of the Senate in such a manner. I hope it was not a coup d'etat that you smiled at. It was brilliant, certainly. So are skyrockets, and sometimes, when the brilliancy is over, a stick comes down and hits someone on the head. If that was intended for statesmanship, angels and ministers of grace defend us. But there is little statesmanship in the U.S. Senate, and nothing at all in the U.S. Grant. Still there is some in Washington, just where it is needless to state. If I said in the White House, I might convey, or contract, my meaning, even that it is there, enough that it is there, and its influence felt, and found, to be strengthening and calming. It must be owned. People are somewhat surprised at it. One hears remarks such as, "This is too good to be true." "Well, this is splendid, but how long will it last?" "Ah, I should be quite enthusiastic if I thought this was genuine, but it is only policy. He is very shrewd." Then I feel terribly tempted to defend you, but I never say one word. If there is any sense in saying that I know what I have no means of proving, your own actions will be your own most eloquent defense. What you have done thus far may be excellent policy, but I believe you were promoted to it by a much higher motive. Yours sincerely, J.I.S.